You are Locked On Hawks POSTCAST, part of Locked On Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Locked On Hawks POSTCAST, your home for the best Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra. Batiste. Alongside me is DeShaun Tate. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The Locked On Hawks POSTCAST is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So DeShaun, the Hawks had to begin this final stretch of the season with frontline issues. We'll definitely talk about how the Hawks looked without Onyeka Okongwu and a limited Clint Capella, among other things in the and one, and whether or not Coach Quin Snyder asked these guys to lead by example. We'll also look ahead to the Hawks Magic game on Sunday, but talk about what was good at State Farm Arena tonight. But first, we got to give you guys our take on a tough loss. Of course, the Hawks falling 123-121 to the Toronto Raptors tonight. Now, DeShaun, when we talked about this pre-production, you said you're kind of still scratching your head about this game.
Very much so. Still after all this time scratching my head. Got a feeling after I go to bed tonight, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow morning and still be scratching my head about this thing. Just an ugly game, a really sloppy game. Yes. Typically when there's these type of games, I always ask you the same question over and over. Hey, Tenitra, when is the last time you've had a sloppy Joe sandwich? And it wasn't so sloppy to the point where there was just like tons of turnovers left and right, but it was just really weird, especially from a standpoint of the officiating. Now, I'm not one that goes out and always blames everything on those who are running up and down the floor with Foot Locker shirts on. But I do ask them to be consistent. Mm-hmm. If you're going to call everything in the first half, call everything in the second. If you're going to, if you're going to hold the whistle in the first half, then hold the whistle in the second. Well, they were consistent, I felt like, but a lot of the calls were just going against the Hawks the entire night. And again, I hate to be that person because that's typically not me unless it's actually happening. And in this game is where I felt like it was actually happening. But I think in some instances also, because of these things, it could be something that, could be character building. For the Atlanta Hawks, because not every night, especially at home, are things going to go your way. And that's from the standpoint of, assuming that the officials are going to see things with, red and white, colored glasses on. How to battle back through adversity when things aren't going your way. You talked about, Quin Snyder and obviously the play that happened with Trey. I know we'll get to that later. But even there was a play shortly after that, with DeAndre Hunter, and it got kind of chippy then too. And so it was a lot of physicality. It was a lot of emotion that was running through the entire arena, you can tell. And I just think that this is one of those moments where it's good to be able to punch back, to counter punch. I wasn't sure how they were going to respond. That was the biggest thing I was looking forward to, is how are they going to respond to all of this where instead of playing 5-on-5, they feel like they're playing 8-on-5. And I think they may have learned a little bit of something from that. But I guess we'll find that out. We will and can have the opportunity for this team to be able to build a little bit of character and motivation, something to learn from after this loss.
Yeah, well, for me, I don't know if I would say it was a character builder. I think the character builder would have been had you won the game, because you had opportunities to win the game. This was a very critical matchup for the Hawks. This is a team that was 2 games behind you, right? Or 2 places behind you. The Hawks being in 10th place in the East, the Raptors being in 12th place, and the Raptors coming off. It's a back-to-back, and they're coming from Toronto. So they're going through customs, and they're coming into Atlanta at 3 a.m. They should be a team with heavier legs than you, and yet you were a team that allowed them to sprint out to a 20-7 lead. So to me, the character builder would have been if we were saying it was a 123-121 game that the Hawks had won versus allowing the Raptors to come in here and do what they did. And I think, too, for me, the disappointment was, well, you had opportunities and you took advantage of them, but then it was almost like it's the question I asked. Just like you said, you have, a statement that you make pretty much every postcast. I have a question that I ask pretty much every postcast, and it is, did what we see on the floor, especially if it's a loss, was it a regression? Like, were they regressing to the mean? And there were just a few too many moments for me tonight where I saw some regression to the mean. Now, don't get me wrong. What I did like, and this speaks to the piece about character that I saw in them, is the ability to keep coming back when they were down by as many as 16 or down by 11. That's great. But again, if you want me to be excited about some character, then I'm going to need you to put another mark in the win column. That's the only way I get excited about it. For me, my takeaway was the first quarter. It looked like the whole first half of the season for the Hawks. It was like, oh my God, what is this, Groundhog Day? What are we on repeat? The Hawks missed 12 straight shots. They didn't score for like this 5-minute stretch. Okay. Then give them credit. They brought the Raptors lead down to a 7-point deficit. But once again, this goes back to that Spider-Man meme. The first quarter, the first half of the season.
Yeah.
Who are you? You. That's what it was for me. And I know that's another example I give all the time. Why do I give it? Because the Hawks keep giving me reasons to give that as an example. Because just as quickly as the Hawks, and we'll talk about quickly in a minute, just as quickly as the Hawks were able to whittle away that Raptors lead down to 7 points, is as quickly as they gave it right back when they allowed the Raptors to end on a 7-0 run at the end of the first quarter, and you go right back up to 11. So that's the kind of thing that's frustrating, that whole back and forth. Or even in the second quarter, give them credit. The Raptors started the quarter, they scored 5 quick points, but the Hawks answered with 8. Nice ball movement. DJ had a good shot. I saw that he easily would have made that shot, but he kicked it out for a better shot to Bogey. Bogey hits the 3, and then a couple possessions later, Sadiq hits DJ with the ball. DJ shoots it back out to Sadiq. They had the defense scrambling, and what does he do? Sadiq hits the corner 3. Those are all good pieces. Problem is, I come back to the same thing that we come back to very often, which is, but then you go back to regressing to the median and doing things that allows this team, even though the Raptors may have only won by 2 points, the point is they won. So you allowed that opportunity. Now, like I said, speaking of quickly, literally, Tate, this was a sidebar for me, but I was like, so nobody's going to put a body on Emmanuel quickly beyond the arc?
At all.
We're just going to let him sit out there and shoot. 6 times? 6 triples? Make sense for me, DeShaun. Because that has nothing to do with your bigs not being here.
I can't tell you it does a ton. But I will say that Emmanuel quickly is slowly emerging as one of the better, and I know he started tonight, but typical backup point guards. You start seeing some of these different guys in different roles. One of those kind of like emerging as one of those Tyrese Maxey type guys, or I can't think of the other guy that just came over that was moved from New York, Grimes, one of those kind of guys. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, but just using his speed, and if I'm not mistaken, what is it? I think the first meeting or second meeting, technically, this one quickly was with New York. He had like 20-point shot, 3 for 5. So he scored, he had 3 3-pointers that he converted on in that game, and over 50%, shooting from the field. Tonight, 24 points and hit for 6 threes. So he's definitely having his way. He's growing as a really good player in this league, obviously. And this is a new place for him, a new home for him in Toronto. But that not being an excuse by any means, they did what they were supposed to do. They took advantage of the Hawks being so bad defensively, and they try to, they're the top team in terms of pace in the NBA. They want to make it a track meet. They know that you can get Atlanta on their heels and get them backpedaling, and they'll pick up easy fouls because they can't stop a nosebleed. They can't even cover a baby with a blanket during nap time, and they exposed it. And I think that's a huge reason behind, why you obviously saw it also look the way that it did in transition with 22 fast break points versus 9.
Yeah, indeed. We're going to talk more Hawks Raptors on the other side, because you know what? We got to tell you guys about Coach, because Coach had that fire tonight. We'll talk about it. And we also want to tell you guys that this episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by Stitch Fix. Now think about this. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really, really good? Well, that's what you can get. That's what I get with Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, your size, and your budget. They'll do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. You can easily do it with on-trend favorites that will work just for you. You just give them your size, give them your style, give them your budget preferences. Now, I order boxes when I want and how I want to, no subscription required. And that's important for me because, hey, I'm on camera a lot, don't want to have to repeat outfits too often, and I just don't have time to shop. Plus, I hate shopping. So this is perfect. And they'll send 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and even pro styling advice. And I can keep it when it works, and I can send it back when it doesn't. And this is one of the really critical pieces because so many other services require that when you ship back, when you return, when you exchange, first of all, you're going to pay for shipping. Second of all, you're going to pay for returns in that they're only going to allow you to get a credit. And even with an exchange, they may not even allow for exchanges. Stitch Fix has you covered. Because if you don't love something, you can send it back to them, you can ship it, return it, and exchange it all for free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. You can get started today with it at stitchfix.com/locked-on. That's stitchfix.com/locked-on. stitchfix.com/locked-on. So the big story ahead of this game, DeShaun, was what was going on the front lines for the Hawks. Obviously, ahead of the All-Star break, Onyeka Okongwu went down with a left big toe injury that he sustained in that Bulls game. After x-rays and MRIs, it was determined that he'd be out for at least 7 to 10 days. But it seemed encouraging at that point, right? And we knew that Clint Capella was going to return to practice after All-Star break, and then the team would kind of evaluate where he would go from there. Well, it turns out it's a little bit deeper than that with Onyeka. He's going to be out for the foreseeable future. That's a direct quote from Quin Snyder pregame. We also found out Clint Capella was actually coming back for the game. He did start, and he would just be on a minutes restriction. Well, you know what, DeShaun? Our Hawks postcast is always about giving flowers where they're due. So let's go ahead and give it to Bruno Fernando. He came off the bench, scored 12 points, 4 rebounds, and a steal. Were you more encouraged, Tate, by Bruno's performance in just those 11 minutes, or were you more discouraged by Clint Capella's performance in 19 minutes? CC only had 5 points, 7 rebounds, and a block.
I was more encouraged by Bruno. And I mean, if there's a such thing as giving the game ball to somebody, he's definitely deserving it, obviously in a loss. But I just think that he's come a long way. This is his second stint, with this team, and expectations for him are not very high at all. If I would have told you that at any point this season that he would, have a 12-point game, then I probably would have, probably tested myself on that one. But I think that especially, and maybe it was just a little bit more so for me. The impressive part about it is because it kind of like it stood out like a sore thumb because it was when the team needed him the most. They were looking everywhere for a little bit of just a spark from somewhere, anywhere. That same atrocious, first quarter opening up the game, something we had gotten really used to, early at the beginning of the season, where, just like when you said earlier tonight in the last segment that, this felt very much like the first half of the season did. He came in to try and change some of that around. And it started with his play. He was active. He was, obviously very energetic. He was relentless. His activity around the rim. A few times I think I saw him rebound and then put back a score, and it was like 4 or 5, uniforms for opposing team Toronto Raptors around him. So I thought that it was a very, very, positive moment for him. And I get it, Clint, this and that. Clint's not 100%. He's still minute restriction, whatever. I love what Bruno gave. I think this is as much of an A+ as an A+ is going to get for Bruno Fernando.
Yeah, I would say the same for Bruno. The expectations are low. We were even texting in our group text for the Skyhawks why maybe this could be an opportunity for Chris Silva, who is tremendous for the Skyhawks, as opposed to maybe what Bruno Fernando was going to do. And who knows? Chris Silva may still be called up for all intents and purposes. But what Bruno did tonight, I thought was pretty noteworthy. And yeah, definitely a pleasant surprise. And they're going to need it, because if foreseeable future, when we only have 26 games left in the season, if foreseeable future is even a third of those games, then you may indeed have to call up Chris Silva, and you're going to need Bruno Fernando to be the Bruno you saw tonight. As I said, Brew yes and not Brew no, because I was saying Brew no. Brew no, but I got to give him his thumbs up for it and his flowers for tonight. Now, I will tell you, for me, it was more discouraging what I saw out of CC in those 19 minutes. I didn't expect a lot from him, but on the same token, I needed a little bit more, because if you're coming back, regardless of whether there is a need for you, if you're out there for 22 minutes, then I'm going to need you to do a little bit more in that 22 minutes. But my discouragement is not from an effort perspective, because I know CC probably gave as much as he could, but it's more of, this is where Clint Capella is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to get much better, even if he heals. He's going to be, CC, Clint Capella is going to be mending. He's going to be on the mend the rest of the season. That's just the reality of it. So really and truly, you already didn't have a lot in the way of consistent defense in the center position. So if you didn't have that at the 5, and that was when Clint was healthy, and he's progressively gotten less healthy as the season has worn on, I can't say that I'm encouraged, because I'm way too concerned about the fact that this is probably the CC we're going to get for the rest of the season, because I don't know if CC is going to get back to 100% before the regular season ends. But that's why, for me, although I was encouraged by what Bruno was able to do, I definitely have to see it many more times than just 1 or 2 games. And I'm concerned because I'm not sure that we're going to see Clint Capella do much better than this. So I don't know. Maybe a 10-day contract for somebody should be in the works, if at all possible. Also, something that was very interesting, a little bit of a different spin to this game, around the 4:25 mark, Quin Snyder got ejected in that second quarter. He was vehemently defending Trae Young after Trae went down on the floor battling against a screen. Now, let me tell you what the pool report said afterwards, DeShaun, just to kind of put some context around it.
Okay.
Our girl Lauren Williams, who is the Hawks beat reporter for the AJC, asked the question in the post-game pool review of the referees. She asked, why was Jakob Poeltl not assessed an offensive foul for the screen he set on Trae Young? The response: during the time of the court, we felt that Poeltl got to a legal guarding position, but when we looked at it at halftime, we did notice that it was illegal leg-to-leg contact, and there should have been a call foul. So Quin Snyder was well within his rights. He was correct in that foul should never have been called. But that said, he got ejected, and the ref said he was assessed the first foul because he aggressively charged and used profane language. And then he got the second one because he continued to charge toward the official and continued to use said profane language. Now, while I did not like Coach being ejected, I like the moxie. I like the fire. I like the in-your-face of it. So I asked Tate, is it good that Coach got booted to show what fired up looks like? Or if you look at the other side of the coin, are you concerned that we don't see enough of this team playing with that kind of fire in their belly? And we ask you guys who follow us all the time and who love to chime in. I mean, what did you think about it? About Coach showing a little edge and standing behind his guy and really, really sticking to his guns about what he thought was right? Robert, you say no leadership on this team. The technicals cost them and no accountability. That's why they lost. And I would agree in terms of, it's interesting you said that, Robert, because I found myself looking on the court to see if there was anyone who was kind of rallying the troops in that moment. I didn't really see that. So Robert, actually, good eye, Robert, because I said the same thing and I was sitting in the arena going, so who's going to rally the troops? Like, who's going to be the person to speak up and say something? And you're right. The technicals ended up costing them. But I did like the fact that Quin Snyder said, not on my watch, at least not without me speaking on it.
I don't think that it was I don't think it was good at all, Tenitra, if I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. You know, we've sat around here for so long talking about, you know, looking for someone with the dog and the edge and the emotional leadership and the, you know, the vocal leadership and all these things. Somebody that's going to say, no, I'm not just standing for anything. I know we're in the home of Southern hospitality and all of that, and all that is great. But you ain't about to just do us like this. Like, I'm not just about to sit back and just accept it. Like, nah, we're not doing that. And I think that that's good. I think that that was warranted. You know, I heard him mention in the post-game press conference how he initially thought that it was, even though it was a quad, he thought that it was a knee injury because it appeared that not only when he got bumped that it was a knee, but also my guy, also my star player, my all-star, you know, is sitting on the ground, wincing in pain. So, of course, that makes a difference, and there should be some line of understanding there, despite some of the whatever foul language or just whatever. So, but I think the other part about it is that while the screen was definitely illegal, I don't think that it was excessive. That doesn't mean it shouldn't have been called, because it should have been. I've just seen a lot crazier stuff than that not get called, if that makes sense. Not making any of it right, but I just thought I'd throw that little piece in there because it's not going to tell the story of the game. And I know that that's the narrative that a lot of people are going to run with, unfortunately. But it was a very emotional game. It was a very physical game. Yes. And I wanted to know what they learned from in this particular situation. And I'm glad that hopefully some people learn some stuff. You know, if the point guard is the extension of the coach in a lot of cases, like we've seen Trey go to bat for some of his guys, you know, in some recent games and stuff like that. I mean, he picked up a technical earlier. DeAndre, Hunter, he picked up one for kind of yapping and stuff. So it's good to see that these guys are at least going out there. Some people gonna say, oh, it's good that they're getting put in a position to where it could be assisting them in losing the game, especially one like this where it was just by a couple points. Had that not happened, then they wouldn't have been sacrificing free throws. But you got to stand on something at some point. And it was good to see the head coach be able to be the one to do that.
Yeah, and that's one of those situations where you take that into account. Like we're watching this game, we're seeing the flow, we're seeing the back and forth, we're seeing that this one is going to go down to the wire, and you as a team then just have to come together, or someone has to take the lead and say, hey, I understand where we are right now. This is a tight game. Yeah, we got those technicals that kind of put us behind. And thank you, Robert. He's like, nope, no issues with coach. Yeah, we got no issues with coach either, Robert. Like, look, somebody's got to show some edge, and somebody's got to show some passion and that they care, because the league loves to call this kind of like the half point or the halfway mark of the season. But the bottom line is really, DeShaun, there's only a third of this season left, and the Hogs have to make up some serious ground with very little time to make it up. So yeah, you really hope that the fire that the coach showed is something that can transfer to the players and result in them being a little bit more fierce about getting wins. We'll talk a little bit more about this one little nagging thing about this game. We'll tell you what exactly that is on the other side. This also brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball's host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a daily or scouting the waiver wire daily draft, that is, every week, we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Let's go with Ayu Dosunmu. With Patrick Williams having season-ending knee surgery, we found that out today. And Torrey Craig, of course, hurting his knee and out the next 2 to 4 weeks. Dosunmu's minutes have increased, and so is his production at both ends of the court. He is now averaging 15.4 points, 3 rebounds, and a steal in 39 minutes in the last 7 games just before All-Star break, which is a good look for him. So if you think that those are some stats and that's been trending up for him throughout this entire season, you might want to get on board with your boy. Now, think about this too. Josh Lloyd is also going to help you to win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors, they you know a little bit about a championship team as well as a perfect fit for your vehicle. Because for them, a championship and a perfect fit for your vehicle, they're one and the same. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits rather, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every single time, or your money back. So at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items apply and exclusions do as well. All right, DeShaun, our not favorite term of this show that just gets all the way under our skin is when we have to tell you guys about an RRP. Tonight's random role player, drum roll please, is Gradey Dick. 18 points to Sean. Where they do that at? How do we let Gradey Dick go off for 18 points in 22 minutes? Houseway.
Yeah. Geez, how does this keep happening? It seems like all the time. We just talked about how bad this
so well with the RRPs, and then they're back.
And then all of a sudden, we literally, I feel like went a couple weeks, even if it was just a couple games. I feel like we went a couple weeks without having that guy. I mean, listen. And Gradey is a really good player. Still trying to figure out who he is, and still trying to make his way in this league. Obviously, him being a rookie coming over from Kansas, but. And I mean, he's got what it takes. But there's got to be a little bit more accountability on the defensive end from our team to just let guys come in here and feel like they could do what they want. And it wasn't just him. There was another guy that came over from Kansas, and I feel like this was probably his best game in a Toronto Raptors uniform. Ochai Agbaji. He was another one on tonight, and so when you're factoring all of these things, it kind of makes you again scratch your head how there's multiple, RRP guys that we sitting here having a conversation about, and just trying to figure out if we get to the bare bottom of it, what is it about our team that is making guys feel like, oh yeah, I'm about to go in there with the napkin wrapped around my neck and a fork in one hand and a knife in the other hand, and I'm ready to feast. It's definitely unfortunate for our club, but if you're gonna let somebody go off like that, I hate for it to be Luka with 70 points or whatever it is, but if it's gonna be a guy, let it be a guy.
Yeah.
Don't let one of these little young guys come in here and feel like, they can kind of flex their muscles and do whatever they want and feel like they're an all-star too.
Yeah, and I think that's the frustrating part. And you make a great point about Luka Doncic. You don't want anybody coming in and dropping a 70-piece no matter who he is. However, at least have some dignity. And if it's somebody like Luka Doncic, you don't feel as bad because Luka is out here dropping those on 50 and 60 pieces and 40 pieces on a whole lot of players and teams, and he is one of the premier players in the entire league. So you feel all right about that. But when you and I have to go back to our RRPs, and then when we have multiple ones in one game, it's not right. Well, listen, you don't want that to happen either on Sunday because the Hawks had a great opportunity. They could have won the season series against this Raptors team, and for a team that's behind them in the standings, that would have been such a great look, just to put a little bit more space between them and sort of the bottom of the East, right? Didn't happen, but there's another opportunity for a team that's actually 2 spots ahead of them in the East, in the Orlando Magic. They're coming to town Sunday. What's it going to take for this Hawks team to win that game and thereby win that series for the season?
I think it's going to be a matter of just taking advantage of some of the pieces that are still youthful. This is a Orlando Magic team that had been without, the Wagner brothers for such a extensive amount of time earlier this season. So it's It's tough because we was talking in the pre-show. That Orlando team is really good. Like they have really, and they're confident and they're young and they're scrappy and they are not afraid. And this is not the ideal team that the Atlanta Hawks would want to see right about now. So I mean, you just have to remember, if you're the Hawks, you know, before you were at one point in time the young, swagged out, you know, Orlando Magic type of team. Well, now you are the veteran team, and so it's time that you put some of these guys in their place. What do the Hawks have to do specifically? It doesn't exist. You go win. That's what you have to do specifically. You do whatever you have to do to go out there and be scrappy and put together a win, an ugly win, a cute win, a win.
Matter. Yeah. And I think it's one to where you look up and down their starting lineup and just make sure. And of course, we know for sure that you can't overlook the bench, but you definitely look at the starting lineup and expect that we may know the name Paolo Banchero, but that's not where this team starts and stops. This is actually a pretty well-rounded team. You've got guys like Jalen Suggs coming into his own. You mentioned the Wagner brothers. They're doing their thing as well. Wendell Carter Jr. I mean, you have a lot of players that are really contributing to this team. That's why they are the team coming in with the winning record. But again, Hawks, you beat them twice this season. They've only beaten you once. So they're looking to even up the series to help keep them in their place in the standings in the East. You got to want to at least get the win so that you can make some ground on the guys that are ahead of you. But we'll end on a positive note. And one thing that went quite well at State Farm Arena, because nobody entertains quite like the Hawks. That's why year after year, they have been the number one team in game experience in the NBA. I can say that because, hey, that's the team that I am actually a part of. But they do super, super well. And so it was HBCU night, and they gave out these kind of like, I guess, their version of the Steelers, the towel that they gave out. I don't know what the Hawks call theirs, the terrible towel, but their version of a terrible towel. But it actually was pretty cool. People were riled up and really fired up. The halftime performance was fantastic, and they highlighted some of their employees this time who went to HBCU. So nice look for the Hawks to really, really go all out for their HBCU night.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad that they have something like this implemented. You know, obviously it's no secret to Atlanta, but it's a kind gesture and obviously a really good look. And I'm glad that they put something together because, like you said, nobody does it the way that ATL does it. I'm sure that doesn't shock anybody for HBCU night. Yeah. Sounds like the place to be. I think I even heard some people like singing. Who was that they were?
There was the rendition of the Keisha Cole song, Love.
Keisha Cole. Keisha Cole.
Gone viral because it's done in every HBCU basketball game.
Listen, I was in my office singing along, and I know that I almost woke the baby up. So, yeah.
Right. Yep. Like you said, only in the A are you going to find it happening like that. Well, hopefully, when we come back for the postcast Sunday night, it'll not only be about an amazing entertainment experience, but it will be about a win. We appreciate you guys for stopping by the Locked On Hawks postcast. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.